Hey agents, welcome back to another episode of Prime Tips. This time we're talking about first Saturdays and second Sundays, what they are, what they were, mostly what they were, and where they may be going. So if you're one of the agents that started playing Ingress during the pandemic, you may not remember what a first Saturday was like. And if you're a really recent player, you may not know what second Sundays were like. Or if you're really recent, you may not know what either one of them are. So we're going to go over and look at them and kind of talk about what they were, which might give us an idea of where they may be going and where they're at now. So let's start with First Saturdays. Now, First Saturday is an event that's sanctioned by NIA. It's organized by FEV Games, and it's run by local agents. So basically, it's a grassroots event with somebody that organizes it a little bit, which is FEV Games, and then Niantic does a number of things to make it worthwhile for your character, your agent, to get stats and that kind of stuff. Started in November of 2018. Now, in April of 2020, COVID, the pandemic hit, and as we see when we talk about what a first Saturday is, that's not a good thing for a pandemic to be doing what you were doing in a first Saturday. So they decided, we're going to have to cancel first Saturdays. And it seemed to be kind of quick for us, if I remember right. But it didn't take them long. May of 2020, they came back, and so only a couple months, with a new format, and they called it First Saturday at Home. We kind of know it as virtual First Saturdays, and that's where we're at right now. It might be changing, who knows? But what is a First Saturday, or what they were? Again, we talked about officially recognized by NIA, but it's really kind of put together at a grassroots event and those type of things. Its real purpose was to gather agents from the local community face to face. So you got to put a face to a name, and you had that one-on-one or one-to-many action a lot of times. So it was one of the few times that you had a lot of agents in one area that they would interact. Some people talked about it was just organized win trading because there was a lot of action going on. You would capture, deploy, and then somebody would tear down, and they deploy, and then you capture. There was a lot of action going on, which was one of the things that it was there for. Again, not really conducive to being safe during a pandemic, so they made the changes the way that it worked. But again, we're talking about the way it was. So set up specific portals and things that are organized. So what you had was, it was set up so that you had to go to a location to take part in a first Saturday. So agents like me that were in a rural area, that could be an hour drive. If you're in a urban area, something like that, they might be organizing them all the time. You had to have, enough portals and things to make it work. But people would come all together and compete. So to get it going, you had to have agents from both sides. It's still like that now. So you had to have a Resistance and Enlightened that decided to put it together. A cross-faction agreement on the venue or the meeting place. That was important because you would have 20, 30, 50, 100 people show up within a 60-minute window, you typically, and you needed a place where you could do that and not be really disruptive. So a lot of times you would see them start those out in like a park or maybe a pub or in a venue that's a food court or something, where you would talk probably with a proprietor saying, hey, here's what we want to do. And they'd say, yeah, it's okay, you can go ahead and do that. Prizes were giving out, a lot of swag. There were competitions for who get the most recharging, who would get the most AP, who gained the most levels, and all those things we'll talk about. Determine existing portals to be hacked for check-in, a registration portal, and then there was a restock portal. So physically you had to be there to hack those portals to get started and to get restocked. And then there's usually a a social time afterwards, which was another big thing for most of them. So the general flow of an in-person first Saturday, which who knows, we might see this come back. About 60 minutes before the event started, the registration portal would go live. So in the next 15 minutes, 60 to 45 minutes before, people would show up at the gathering spot. Some may hack the registration portal, but you had to make sure that 30 minutes before the event starts, organizers would give a welcome speech, explain the event format. That was another thing, is that not all First Saturdays were the same. So you may go to one First Saturday and there may be 4 or 5 events that they do that another First Saturday doesn't do. So you might have a very plain Jane First Saturday, which is, we're just going to look at XP and levels, go out in the field and, blow each other up. Or you might have somebody that says, hey, we've got a couple different events, we've got a banner, and we're going to have one-on-one play. So you may have a lot of things going on. It just depended upon the organizers and the place that the event was as to what was going on. 15 minutes before the event starts, a group picture was taken. Now that was important. That was the way that you could prove that you had agents on the ground that were there. Even if, they would hack the registration portal, they may not have been there, the spoof, so to say, or you may just had somebody passing by. And that, along those lines, that was one of the problems that you ran into in the in-person First Saturdays, is people would show up and, believe it or not, they would forget to hack the registration portal. Kind of akin to the at-home or the virtuals, that forgetting to upload your start stats. It's much easier now with what they're doing with the in-home or the virtual registration. But you had to physically hack that portal. There were some other things you had to do as well. So you had to check in and you had to check out, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But they hacked the registration portal. 2-hour event window. Participants do in-game activities. That's typically, so you'd hack it and then you'd go out into the field and maybe do a mission or go into the area that they had nearby and battle it out with opposing factions, and then return back. And within that 2-hour time period, near the end of that 2-hour time period, you would then check back in. So 30 minutes after the event window closes, the social restocking portal goes live. Now, typically they would have, at least the ones that I went to, 2 different portals for the registration and the restock. And usually they would try to have them nearby one another. If you're in the same venue, you want to try to find a venue that would have, say, 2 portals within reach of the venue. Or maybe you start at one place, start in a park, and then you're ending, your restock portal is at a bar nearby or a food court nearby. But you have to make sure that all of your participants know that we're starting here and we're ending there. So it was just easier to say, hey, we're going to start here and we're going to end here. The registration portal's down here at the end of the block, and the restock portal's going to be right here in front of the venue. The social event, again, would start, and there was always checking to make sure that people got home. So how long would that event last? Typically, the ones that I went to, it's a 2-hour window, but you get there an hour early, maybe an hour or 2 afterwards. So you're looking at 5 hours. And again, you want to, the rule agents, there's an hour drive, an hour before. So could be an all-day event. Requirements to host that event, again, organizer from each faction. You had to register your city with Fev Games 14 days in advance, so it wasn't something that you could just set up the day before. You had to go way in advance to have it all set up. Secure the venue, take that group photo, find a place to socialize. It was a big event. Check-in handling. Now, check-in was much different. It was a lot of it was kind of manual. I remember going to First Saturdays where they would have 2 laptops, and they would have a resistance agent and an enlightened agent, and to foster the cross-faction. Again, this was to foster cross-faction action. The enlightened players would go to the res agent and check in. And then the res agent would go to the enlightened one to check in, and they would key in the information. So you'd get out your scanner, show it to them, and say, okay, here's my agent name, and then they would scroll to make sure that you're just not showing them a screenshot. And then, here's my level, here's my other stats that they're keeping track of, and they would key all that information into that spreadsheet. Take the picture, go out in the field, come back, and in the check-in, you'd find them, and then you would say, okay, now here's where I'm at for level, here's where I'm at for AP, et cetera, and they would key that information in. And the spreadsheet would do some of the work for them. Not like what you have with the virtual First Saturdays, where it's simply, hey, I just, tell it to copy my stats, open up the form, and dump it in and hit start. So I'm sure that if they go to in-person First Saturdays, that they're probably going to continue to do it that way because it's so much easier and there's a lot less chance for an error. Some of the ideas, again, you could do all different kinds of things during a First Saturday event. Encoded portal lists. So you give them a list of names that are encoded somehow, and they have to break that code and then figure out where the portal is that they're going to. And the first one to get it done, or get it done with the fewest events, however you want to do it, is a winner. Dead drops. So they would dead drop things, and you would have to find them and either take a picture of the dead drop or provide information that you're at the portal, and you go to the next one. Missions were a big thing for the ones that I went to. Typically, they would create a mission for that first Saturday, and if you'd submit that those 6 portals or 6 missions, before, or that one mission before, and you said, hey, it's a week in advance, and you tag it Ingress FS hashtag, they would do their best to put that through as quickly as possible so that it was ready or go live for the first Saturday. Stat-based play, that was a big thing. Levels gained, AP gained, clicks walked. Those are ones that I saw used quite often, but you could be glyph points, resos deployed, links created, MU captured. I mean, anything that's a stat you could probably use as a competitive thing. And typically those people were recognized, and if there's some swag, they'd give that away. Human shard game, kind of a neat idea. Break up into groups. One person is a shard, have a starting point and a target portal, and how and when the person moves is typically there's a link, and you can say, okay, they move every 2 minutes, or they move whenever the link is established. It's up to you. And then they try to get them there with the least amount of moves, or the first one there. Capsule soccer is an interesting idea that basically all of your resistance players have resonators, all of your enlightened players will have bursters, and at the beginning you throw down a capsule, and whoever picks it up puts in something. So if I'm a resistance, I throw a resonator in, and then I drop it, and I can't pick it up again. And then the enlightened or somebody else picks it up, and they put their thing in, and they drop it again. And again, it's easy to cheat. You could throw 10 in. But if everybody's playing along, when it gets to time's up or the capsule's full, then you look to see how many resonators or bursters you have, and that determines your winner, which is a neat idea. So again, those in-person ones, you could have a lot of different things happening. Organizing it was a big deal, and it still is kind of a big deal because there's a lot of work that has to be done ahead of time. So you have to get the registration page, get the auto score sheet all set up, and you can see that they look at the key dates, 2 weeks before, or actually the Thursday after the previous first Saturday, registration opens up with FEV games. So you can say, hey, I'd like to have one in my city, and 14 days before that closes. So you have to get it in that time, and then 10 days before, the details are verified by Niantic and they appear on the event pages. Now, again, in a first person, the portal details and times are locked in. Again, since we're not doing in person, we're doing virtuals, that's not really there. But then things set up. So you can kind of get an idea of the overall timeline. So the day of that first Saturday, if you're doing an in-person, and again, I saw a lot of them start at like noon or 1 p.m. The registration portal would go live, and then they'd have an hour for people to hack the registration portal, take the group picture, talk about what items that they're tracking for stats and awards, and then you had a 2 hour in the field. Now that would be double XP. Now it wouldn't be double XP while you're playing. It was double XP, so you'd get the XP that you had, and then when they reported the sheet back into Fev Games and onto Niantic, when they gave the tick for the first Saturday badge, they also gave you that XP, or sorry, AP. So you would get your double AP, but not right away. And then at the end of the event, 30 minutes later, the restock portal opens up, and then everybody starts drinking or celebrating or whatever it happens to be. So prizes as swag were given away a lot of times. Again, it just depends on the first Saturday. I know the ones that we went to is when they check in that 30 minutes while we're waiting for the restock portal to go live. That's when we'd say, hey, who's the furthest away? Okay, you get this piece of swag. Who has the most recharges in the past month? And people would call out numbers. Then the person who said they'd verify on the scanner. Yep, you're the winner. You get this. But it was a different event. So it was neat to be at that first Saturday, and of course that all changed with COVID. So now it's really just a matter of that you have to find that registration form, copy your stats, dump it into the Google form, hit start, and then go do whatever it is that you do. So you don't have to really see anybody. You could sit at home and you could recharge portals, or you can go to your local park where nobody's there and do some microfielding, whatever, and then get the stats and upload them, and away you go. You can also get stats if you are in the decode challenge. Now, the reason that you see a decode challenge in the first Saturdays that are at home or the virtuals is there's no restock portal. So to offset or to kind of give you the what you had through a restock portal, although it's not as generous in many cases, you would have the decode challenge, and then you would have the local code for that location whenever they had the decode done that you can redeem and get the gear and get a piece of media and those type of things that show you were there. So just a point on that, if you are at a virtual first Saturday and you get a code, don't share it. Don't share it on a public media with everybody else, because there's only so many times that can be redeemed. And if you've got, 50 agents at that first Saturday and you share it out to, maybe a Discord or something like that, and 100 people redeem it real quickly, and then you might have 25, 30 agents that were actually there that can't redeem that code because it's been used up. So please don't share those. Now, the global code, which typically comes later, that is something that you can kind of share because it's global, but typically that's something you don't want to share as well, but you should be able to contact back to the people that you are in the virtual first Saturday and get that global code as well. So first Saturdays are a great thing to get to know other people. Again, you may not see them face to face right now, but you can chat. You can. There's a number of ways that you can communicate with those people, but it's also a great way to come up with a lot of points for your AP. The score sheet itself, again, this is all kind of automated now, but this is kind of what you would see whenever you did the in-person. You would actually come up to the table and say, hey, my name's Goonie Guy, I'm Enlightened, and they say, okay, let me look at your scanner. We're going to pull out your lifetime AP, your start level, and then later we'll figure out what your end level is, and they'll do the math and figure out the gain. And here's your AP when you start, and when you check in at the end, they put in the AP for your ending, and it figures that out. And then it would also have a leaderboard so it knows here's all the agents, and they would be able to at that time to say, hey, our AP gain winner is Dewey J. He had 750. Number 2 was Goonie Guy, and they could put that information and give away swag or whatever. You could you could track a lot more than just those items. So some of the things that they could track, level, lifetime AP, XM collected, distance walked, OPR agreements, mine units captured, portals captured. All of those could be added into that score sheet. So when they get the data, you could have, the first, your entry and your end, and then what it ends up being for how many the offset is. You also notice that it has a participation and stats verified. So stats verified means, I've looked at the stats and I've got them and they're good. The participation, it used to be in the in-person first Saturdays, I think it was 5,000 AP that you had to come up with to officially show that you were there and participating, even though you may have hacked the registration portal. I think now it's like 1 AP for the virtuals, but you really don't even have to do that. So if you happen to get in on a virtual first Saturday and you help with the decoding challenge and your organizer knows that, he could just simply check, yes, they participated. And then I wouldn't even have to have any AP gain, and I would still have the tick for the badge. So that's first Saturday. And there was a lot of stuff about pictures. You had to have 10 people in your picture. You couldn't do a collage because they wanted a group photo, and they had a lot of information about the group photo, which now, since we're not together, we can't do that group photo, so we do the collage. And then it was posted on social media, so like Facebook or something like that. That was an open so that they could get in and see, hey, here's the names of the people, here's the information, and here's the picture, so that they could verify that it actually happened. But during the pandemic, again, they didn't want people meeting face-to-face, yet they still wanted people to play Ingress. So they came up with the idea of Second Sunday. So that was introduced in July of 2021. And at that time, it counted towards a Mission Day badge. So you could do any 6 official NIA missions, and you got a tick on your Mission Day badge. That kind of threw the balance off on things, so they changed that in 2022 to introduce the Second Sunday badge. So there were 7 months that you could have got a tick on your Mission Day, which we'll talk about how that actually worked. But now the way it is with Second Sunday, any 6 missions will get you a tick on the Second Sunday badge. So that means that you could repeat any 6 missions. But originally, it had to be any 6 official missions created by 7 accounts. Missions by NIA, Mission Days NIA, Missions NIA, MD NIA 2, which is Standard Mission Day, MD NIA 2020. All of those were missions that were officially created for probably a missions day. So if you knew where there was a mission day, you could go to that town and do any 6 of those missions, which gives you 1 row on your scanner, and you would get the tick on your Mission Day badge. So it was kind of like Mission Day, but again, you didn't have to see anybody. You could go up and do those and get away. But it wasn't a Mission Day, so they changed it so that it could be any 6 missions that you do. So the Second Sunday, as it is now, you can actually repeat the same 6 missions. So if you have 6 missions that you have nearby, on a Sunday you could go out and do those 6 and get your tick for your Second Sunday badge, which is really helpful for rural agents like me, because I've got 2 places that I can go do that within like 25, 30 minutes. If I have to go to where there's official Mission Day, that's an hour and a half, 2-hour drive at least. but you can repeat the same ones. You don't have to do unique missions. But be careful if you do that so that you don't mess up your banners on your scanner. So you want to make sure that you do a whole row over, and it'll just put them on the top and everything will filter down. And again, you got the badges that go along with it. So Second Sunday is out there, and it's a good way to get out in the field. And speaking of which, I hope I see you out in the field soon. So long, agents.